Partners in crime, it is great to see you. Sorry, we were having some technical difficulties this morning. I am here to welcome Mr. Brian Silverman. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, Gina.
It's great to see you today. Thanks for joining us.
Pleasure.
Now, Partners in crime, let me tell you a little bit about Brian. His career has spanned over 30 years. He's written about travel, food, and sports for a lot of major publications. For several years, he was the author of the annual Frommer's New York City Guidebook series, which is so cool. Um, and he co-authored the acclaimed 20th century Treasury of Sports with his father. Um, his short fiction has appeared, well, virtually everywhere. That list is humongous. And today we're going to talk about his debut novel, Freedom Drop, which has just been re-released, and his upcoming release, Calypso Blue. So this is so cool. So let's first talk about Freedom Drop. Now,
Good.
Freedom Drop features a character, Len. Can you pronounce his last name for me?
Buonfiglio.
Yeah, that just completely. So Len gets pulled into a mystery on a Caribbean island. So this is really cool. So can you tell us a little bit about this investigation and how he gets pulled in?
Well, he's a bar owner on the island, but he's from New York, and he left New York after a traumatic incident in the city that kind of shattered his life and his family, and starting a new life on this small Caribbean island. And there he opens a bar, and as he's lived there. Um, I guess he feels like he's an outsider. He's not part of the community, and in to ingratiate himself with the community rather than be seen as a foreign interloper, just trying to profit off the island. He actually when people ask for help, he goes out of his way to help them. And in this case, in Freedom Drop, um, the mother of a very popular tour guide on the island is in trouble. He's been suspected of a murder or a possible murder of a young American writer, travel writer. And she wants to clear his name. And she enlists Len to help her to get her son out of jail. And part of the other conflict is his daughter, who he hadn't seen in 2 years, is visiting him on St. Pierre for the first time. So he has to juggle getting getting to know his daughter again and helping this tour guide to clear his name.
And his relationship with his daughter and her visit, that takes up a lot of the beginning of the book. And it's very important. Can you tell us why you included that?
Well, I wanted to show him that show the reader his connection to New York, and that he was, he left his family, but mainly physically rather than mentally. I mean, he still had a big connection to. He has a son also, but in this case, it's his daughter, who's the older of the two, is old enough to come visit him for the first time, and of course, he's plagued by guilt for leaving them, and also not spending the time he should have as a father. And so he's hoping to make amends, which he knows he really can't do, but he's going to try his best.
I love that they have a relationship. I mean, they live forever apart and don't physically see each other, but they really do have a relationship and a connection. And you really showed that throughout the book.
I think nowadays it's a lot easier with FaceTime. And I don't go into that in the book, but it's kind of assumed how people can communicate far, thousands of miles away. And it's like you're right there. So I guess that makes the relationships a little different and closer in a way.
Yeah, but the antithesis of that really is the way that you pulled in his relationship with the people on the island. like the way that he was hired um, by them just dropping off dinner.
Food. Yeah. Well, he doesn't get paid for what he does to help them, and yeah, I kind of I don't really go into it so much in the book, but part of my process in writing the novel was I wrote short stories with Len as the main character and the island, and there
Yeah.
were mysteries in those short stories, and they actually have names of food each story, and that's how it started. But in this case, it's known on the island that if you want some help from Len, bring him a nice home cooked meal. So
I love that. Um, so is that how you kind of pull in the cultural differences between New York and the islands?
yeah, he was a fish out of water. I mean, it's not like he was knew the islands that well. He just after he left New York, he did visit other islands, but he landed on this small. It's a fictional island, Saint Pierre. It's kind of a composite of some of the many islands I've been to, and chose that as his island. It fit whatever. He also wanted to open up a bar on the island, and he opens the first sports bar on Saint Pierre. Uh, so that's sort of how he landed. It fit his personality rather than a bigger island.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems to suit him really well. And I love how you describe his home and his view. I don't why he
Well,
chose it.
yeah, I guess that it. Yeah, it's different than New York, quite different. The sound of chickens and roosters and goats as opposed to honking and sirens.
It's all noise, right?
Yeah,
Now, what influenced this particular storyline of Freedom Drop?
years ago, I can give you a little background. I was a travel writer, and part of a big focus of my travel writing was the Caribbean, which is how I, went visited all these islands and pretty much got to know the culture and a lot of them, and the food and the music and other parts of the island, but the histories of them. But uh, he just it's just the kind of thing that he adapted to. I mean, that's all. So, um, but it didn't. The years ago there was a story about a travel writer who who was killed, and nobody knew how she died. And it was on a Caribbean island. I'm not going to say which island, but it was sort of a germ in my head, that could develop into a good mystery. So I used that as the beginnings of the plot for Freedom Drop,
Mhm.
uh, and it's nothing like what happened to the woman in real life, but it was a germ of an idea. Basically, I kind of work inside out. I start with the setting and the character, and then I'll find my plot, or that it can fit them. So that's how I do it. I mean, the you know, plots are tough for me, and to make them work. And as a reader, to be honest, I'm more as a mystery reader, which I have. I'm a big fan of so many of the great mystery writers. I pay less attention to actually what's going on rather than to what's happening with the characters and where they are and things like that. To me, that sets those mysteries apart that I've loved over the years, rather than who killed who and that type of thing.
So in thinking about that, you went from a lot of nonfiction books to fiction, and you definitely bring in the local flavor and the like. It's an immersive experience to read your book. I really feel like you're there. So I'm sure that nonfiction writing played into that. But how else did that help you as you started to write the fiction books?
Well, like I said, I mean, it just gave me good background from my
Mhm.
experiences. As a travel writer covering the islands. It wasn't just surface. So I've been to a lot of them, and I've been many times. So it made me more familiar with that region and the culture there, even though each island's a little bit different. So that's why I said it's a kind of a composite. I bring a lot little of both different islands into Saint Pierre.
Now, is Freedom Drop the place an actual thing?
Freedom Drop, the actual name is not.
Mhm.
However, many islands do have that. That's part of many of the islands' history where uh, where there were Europeans that came to the islands and took over, invaded them, and enslaved, whether it was at first the indigenous people, and then after that the African slaves. And um, I can't tell you how many islands have a cliff where the whether it's the indigenous people or the slaves would leap rather than to their death rather than become slaves. So that's the basis to that. And in this case, in Saint Pierre, the name of the where that happened is Freedom Drop, because they killed themselves, and in doing so, they found freedom.
That's a very heavy topic that you're pulling into.
Well, I don't want to. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't go deep into that. It's just part of their history. That's
Mhm.
all, and part of a lot of the island's history are really based on slavery and that they were occupied by foreigners. So that is the history.
Wow. Now, your new novel that's coming out soon is Calypso Blue. So, can you tell us a little bit about that? I haven't gotten to read that one yet.
Okay. Um, well, that's Len again, and he and his buddy Tubby, who you meet
I love Tubby.
in uh, in Freedom Drop, who's a partner in the bar and helps him when he needs help in other issues. But Calypso Blue is about it takes place when a local legend, a calypsonian, at a calypso music, he's an older person, but he was legendary for the island, dies, and that starts rumors on the island that he's he. The official word is that he died of natural causes from a fall, but of course, a lot on the island gossip and spread rumors that his younger wife hit him over the head with something. So in this case, Len is enlisted by the local um, police chief, who in Freedom Drop he has sort of a touch and go relationship. But here he wants Len to help him because he needs someone outside of the police to try to find out what really happened to the name of the Calypso performer is Lord Ram. That was his name. And to complicate things, well, he reluctantly does this for the police chief. An old friend comes back to the island and with him brings really bad trouble that Len has to get involved with. So he's juggling two things in this one. Um, so, um, and he doesn't have any family visit him. It's not his daughter, but I think you'll like it. I mean, it seems maybe a little darker than the first one. So you can judge for yourself after you read it.
I'm
But it still
excited.
might make you want to go to the bar and have a rum punch. That's the
One of my
idea.
favorites.
Okay.
So, why did you decide to keep bringing Len back? I wasn't aware that he was in the short stories, but I mean, because
Well, I always had an idea, at least for, because of the short stories. Well, I had written the short stories to help familiarize myself with what I was writing, with the characters, to get to know them better before I set out writing the longer version, a novel, which is a longer commitment than a short story. Takes a lot longer. So before I got there, I wanted to see how this worked, and the short stories were received well, and I was building more depth to the characters, and I always knew that there'd be more than one, and so Calypso, after the feedback that I got for Freedom Drop. People wanted to see more, and I was encouraged to write another one with the same characters in the same setting. And now I'm working on the third. Maybe it'll be a trilogy, maybe beyond. We'll see. I'm not thinking that far ahead.
So it sounds like you approach your character development by doing the short stories.
I did in this case, yes. Yeah, I
Yeah.
just felt I was in because I hadn't, I was writing mostly nonfiction. This was kind of new for me, even though I've read so many mysteries and I know that, there's all these, genre kind of, you can call them stereotypes and cliches, which of course I want to steer clear of, but just to frame what I wanted to write what I like to read.
Mhm.
So um, yeah, from moving from the short stories to I just was not confident enough to go right into a novel, and so I wanted to debut the characters and the mysteries in the short story form, and I was very lucky; they were well received, so that encouraged me to move on to writing the novels.
Gosh. So now, in addition to your character development, you made a big leap from moving him from New York to the Caribbean. Now, are all of the short stories set in the Caribbean?
Well, no. There's a
Okay.
short story wrote called Land of Promise that was in Mystery Tribune and then got selected as one of the best American mystery and suspense stories in 2021 that tells his backstory, what made him uh, leave New York, the incident that why he left New York. So, and that is actually told in the third person, whereas the stories and these novels are in the first person.
Mhm.
So that takes place in New York. And as a giveaway now to reveal what I'm working on now, the third one is a big chunk of the book is going to take place in New York, both the Caribbean and New York, but a lot of it will be in New York. He goes
And
back.
besides the food and the sounds, what are important for you when you're doing your settings? Um, like, and to portray the Caribbean versus New York, which is where you're from and where you spend
Right.
most of your time.
Right. Well, I just wanted to get the flavor of the
Mhm.
islands. And in doing that, it's not just, well, part of it is like describing the food but also the interaction between Len and the people on the island, which I hope also creates the atmosphere of the island. The way they talk, even though I don't go heavy on the patois, because anyway, it's just the relationships, the things, their banter that they might just have at the bar, and just talking about small stuff in a way,
Mhm.
which gives you a feel of the island.
You pull a lot of real life into the books. It's not just solely focused on the mystery. It's not complete suspense, but there's a lot of just life, the interactions and the bar scenes, like you said. Um,
Well, that's what I was saying about the mysteries that I've read that I like so much. Incorporate that more
yeah.
and less on the heavy on the plot. A lot of people like Agatha Christie's great and all those locked room mysteries, but that's not the style I do. I prefer a different style. It's just my preference, and that's the way I write. The same kind of style, where it's more heavy on the character and just the atmosphere as opposed to what actually is going on in the novel. In the
Yeah, and Len's such a great guy. I love how you took him from, like, he was originally an artist and then he was a Marine and then he was a bar owner and then he was a bar owner in a different area.
Yeah.
But then he's a detective. And so you kind of immerse all of that together and he's a pretty fully fleshed individual.
Well, that's the idea. You try to get that rather than multi-dimensional as opposed to one-dimensional. But I don't know if he'd call himself a detective. That he's yet to do that. He does do investigations, but I don't think he'd be bold enough to say, yes, I'm a detective, because like, like the detectives of that we all know in famous books. So,
Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about your writing process? I mean, because there was a lot of years between your two books. Um,
well, that's not so much voluntary, even though I am slow. I'm definitely slow.
okay.
Stephen King, I'm not, so, uh, but part of the I had left my after the last book. I left the publisher that I had, and I finished Calypso Blue, and I was trying to find a new publisher. And that process, as you'll probably hear from other writers, but we don't want to really go into too much here, is a long process, whether
Yeah.
to find an agent, then after the agent to get it published. So that takes time. In fact, it takes more time than writing the book. So that's why in this case, there were many years between the two books. I actually finished Calypso Blue at least 2 years ago.
Oh,
So,
wow.
I mean, there've been rewrites and little
Yeah.
things here and there, but once before, so it just takes a while, and I'm just happy it's coming out soon.
Oh, they're wonderful. And so I got to see the cover in person for Calypso
Yeah,
Blue, and I love your new covers. They're amazing.
thank you. Yeah, I mean, I like working on that. I worked with the publisher in this case, but in the first edition of my Freedom Drop, I pretty much created the whole cover with the publisher. So it's something I really, when you're looking at books, a cover does make, you can't start reading them, but the cover will get you first. So I'm hoping that
Yes.
that's the case here. So then you'll turn the pages after that.
Yeah. Now, when you're writing, you said it takes you a long time. What is your process like on a day-to-day, daily basis?
Well, I have no word count limit like a lot of writers do. They say I got, or even time limit. I don't like to sit around and just sit there and I got nothing. I'm done. I'm done if I have nothing. But why I'm so slow, part of the reason I'm a seat of the pantsers. I don't know if you know the difference. There's plotters and seat of the pantsers. I don't know what's going on. Like I'm maybe more than halfway into this third book, and I have to go out for a bike ride to figure out, okay, what am I going to write tomorrow?
Yeah.
So I have some ideas, and I kind of have an idea what happens at the beginning, what's going to happen at the end, but I got to fill it all in and make it work. So once I get the first draft done and I have all that, then I move quicker. So right now it's slow. But that's just the way my process is. I can't really, and I'm not under, any deadlines. If
Mhm.
I was, it would be a different process. So
So do you do your editing while you're writing, or do you write your first draft and then
I usually try to write the first. I'm tempted to go back, but that's like, then I can keep going back and going back. So I'm going to try to
right?
get the first draft done. That's what I like to do, and then start the editing process. Though I will review what I wrote, like whether it's 3 pages every day, and make small little changes in that. But on the whole, I'd like to get that draft done first before I go over it again.
Have you thought about like combining all of your short stories into one book so we can just grab all of the Len backstory?
I should do that. I haven't thought of it. I don't know if it's enough to fill a book. I don't know, maybe 5 or 6, but it's a good idea. And in fact, my first story published was on an online uh, literary website, and
Yeah.
it featured Len going to the island, and it was
Mhm.
not a mystery, but it set the stage. And I wrote it probably like 5 or 6 years before I started to move it into the mystery genre. And it was just about him opening the bar on the island, and there really wasn't much backstory. But that was my first short story published. I mean, I've had other, plenty of nonfiction, but and he was the character. So after I wrote that, said maybe transition him into something more. And
Wow.
it worked.
That's amazing. Yeah. So can I ask you something completely different and not related to these books at all?
Sure.
What was it like to write with your dad?
Well, that was a great experience for me. He's no longer around, so it's something I'll always remember. And you know, he was in the sports world, and we both love sports. So this was the perfect. I was also writing, you know, doing some sports magazine writing without him before then, and it was just a nice collaboration. We didn't have too many conflicts at all, which you always worry about in something like that. It was smooth, very smooth throughout, and
Oh, I'm
that
so
I'm
glad.
grateful for. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, that is terrific. And thank you for joining us today.
my pleasure. It's great to be
Is
here.
is there anything that we haven't talked about that you would like to share with my partners in crime?
Only to give the not so subtle plug that Calypso Blue, well, Freedom Drop is available now on Amazon and other platforms, ebook and print and audio for that matter. Freedom Drop, Calypso Blue is available now for pre-order on all the platforms in ebook and print, and then will be available immediately at June 30th.
I'm so excited. I can't wait to get that one.
Thank you.
And I will have the links in the show notes so that everybody can grab those quickly, your website and your Amazon author page and stuff.
Great. Thank you very
So
much, Gina.
thank you so much. I hope we get to chat again.
I look forward to it. Thanks.
Thank you. And thank you, partners in crime. You have a great day.